Allegiance called to order. I'm calling it to order. Would you lead us in a salute to the flag, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. School committee chair report. I have nothing to report at this time. Resource committee, Mr. Stevens.
Nothing at this time.
Any questions? Comments, concerns? Seeing none. School building needs. Mr. Stevens, once again.
The only thing with school building needs, the Crocker School Committee will be meeting tomorrow.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
Seeing none. Policy subcommittee, Mr. Horgan.
Yep, nothing to report.
Thank you. Questions? Comments? Seeing none. Is Ms. LaBelle Pierce, is she on? She is, right? Yeah, she is. Okay. Student support subcommittee report. Chair LaBelle Pierce.
I don't have anything to report right now. I have to work on our minutes. So I'll have to wait for that one. Sorry.
Okay. Questions? Concerns? Okay. School personnel committee, I have nothing to report at this time. Executive committee, nothing as well. And student reps, who do we have tonight?
We have one student rep. Stand by.
Yes.
Hi everybody, this is Kaden Scapoletti. I would like to begin this week by offering a huge congratulations to the graduated class of 2020. Despite the fact that the 54th graduation commencement was supposed to have been held this past Friday, Fitchburg High is still looking forward to what will hopefully be an exciting commencement on Saturday, July 25th. These past few months have been a challenge to say the least, but 2020 has solidified that they are now part of the best high school in the state. They've done everything in their power to have granted Fitchburg High with the best graduation rate, lowest dropout rate, highest attendance rate, strongest AP and dual enrollment results, strongest athletic performances, amazing extracurricular performances in band and theater, and most impactful community service in this past year. Tuesday is the day that begins caps and gowns distribution to these accomplished seniors. An additional congratulations to both Winola Ashaju and Elise Pierce for earning North Central Chamber of Commerce scholarships this year. Both students are among the very best in our region, and it is well deserved that they have earned this recognition. Congrats to Latrell Bodie, who signed a letter of intent to pursue a college football opportunity at Black Hills State University in South Dakota. That's a long way for a Red Raider, and we wish him all the best as part of the Yellow Jackets program. Thursday was a great night at Crocker Field for the 105th relays. Thanks to all who made the efforts to put this together and give the students something to connect with the school. The juniors and seniors were both able to compete while maintaining social distancing and kept the tradition alive. The Massachusetts Board of Education has essentially waived the science and technology MCAS requirement for the current classes of 2021, 2022, and 2023. What this means is that the students in these classes will need to take and pass courses like biology, engineering the future, physics, and/or chemistry, but will not need to actually pass a related MCAS course in these classes. The classes of 2022 and 2023 will need to take the English and Math MCAS tests next year, and we will keep all the information about those updates for when these assessments will take place, especially for the class of 2022. As Fitchburg High continues to restore traditions in new and safe ways, the student body has a little hope for the future and is eagerly anticipating the light at the end of this tunnel. That's about it for this week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, concerns? Nicely done. Thank you. Moving on, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular school committee meeting, May 18th,
Make a
2020?
motion to approve them.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve. I believe we're supposed to take individual votes. Is that how that works?
That was my understanding.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ms. Greenleaf, will you call the members of the committee for their votes, please?
Yes, sir. Okay, Mayor DiNatale,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
Miss Cragen,
Yes.
Mrs. LaBelle Pierce,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mr. Horgan.
Yes.
Thank you. We are unanimous.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's unanimous vote to approve the minutes of the regular school committee meeting of May 18th, 2020. I believe we'll be going into executive session following or toward the end of this meeting. Any communications that wish to be made? Yes,
I have
Ms.
one.
Craig.
Thanks. So Therapause, which is the therapy pet group in North Central Mass, we are doing a virtual pet therapy session this coming Saturday at 10:30 till about 12, and we're going to do it as a Zoom meeting. If people would like to get the Zoom invitation, it should be, it'll be on our Facebook page. We did send out a notice to the Sentinel, Champion, and Lunenburg Ledger. People can also email me, Sally Cragen at verizon.net, or call 978-320-1335. We will have a variety of pets that kids can read to. So we're urging parents with children to have their kids get a book. We do also have therapy pet teams that can connect with kids ad hoc through Zoom meetings. We're working with one of the teachers to make that happen, and I'm working with a parent to do that. So pet therapy continues, even though you can't really pet the pet.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Questions? Seeing none, moving on. Public comment. Anyone wishing to make a public comment this evening? Is there anyone in the wings waiting?
I have no questions for public
Okay.
comment.
Great, thank you. Moving on to the superintendent's report. Mr. Joker.
Okay. Great. So tonight we have, it's the annual vote for school choice. And with us tonight is Eva Kelly, the Director of Enrollment, and she's here to present the district's recommendation for next year. Eva?
So I would recommend that we remain a district open to school choice for students to select our school in from other communities. We've been open, ongoing. We receive a lot of our students at Goodrich Academy and Pittsburgh High from outside of the district, and a lot of students that come in at different grade levels as well. There's a provision in the legislation that allows us to, if we feel like one grade level is becoming too full, to start taking a wait list of students for that particular grade level. So I would suggest we stay open. Do you guys have any questions?
This is Jim. Eva, a quick question. Approximately how many students attend Fitchburg schools who are out of district by school?
About 400.
400. Okay. Thank you.
Good.
That's 400 out and about.
That come in from outside.
Okay.
How about who go out from inside? I don't have that number off the top of my head. It's a bit larger.
It's about 200 coming in and about 400 going out, Eva.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right, moving on. Mr. Joker.
Okay. Tonight we have Roanne Demanch, our Director of Pupil Personnel Services, with us to talk about summer school for this summer. Clearly this year is different from other years. And with that as an introduction, Roanne, you have the floor or the screen.
Thank you. So as you know, special education offers a pretty robust summer program according to students' IEPs. So this year, those offerings are going to remain as they are now in a remote service. The reason for that is we don't have the proper PPE yet to bring students back in and haven't set up protocols for that. If we do, in the guidance right now, as most districts are remaining remote, if we do end up being able to provide any type of service as we get closer to July, which our summer program is running July 6th to August 6th, it would be more individualized basis, a one-to-one for students that we know cannot access remote learning or are struggling with the remote learning. So we'd make provisions around that, but we haven't really gotten to that stage yet of whether we can do that and have the students and the staff be safe. So at this time, we're planning for remote learning. Questions about that?
Can I add one thing, Roanne? We also will be running a 21st century program this year remotely for grades 2 to 8 during the month of July. More information will be going out next week to parents for students to sign up. But unfortunately, we will also be holding the 21st century program virtually this summer.
Rowan, I have a question. So is it any student who wants to partake in the remote is in special education is able to?
So right now we are planning a couple of options. So we're still kind of working out the details. We have a requirement through individualized IEPs to provide services to students, and those are the ones we're planning for immediately. Given the situation that we're in, we're worried about regression for all of our special ed students. So we are planning on making some offerings out to everybody, regardless of whether they have it in their IEP or not, with some virtual remote learning throughout summertime. So we'll add kids into other classes. We've advertised right now, and we've had over 40 staff members apply to do the remote learning this summer. So we have a lot of staff that are just going to remain with the students that they service all year long. And so we would just add them right into classes, regardless of whether it's in their IEP or not.
And those staff members are special education staff?
Yes. And that includes occupational therapists, speech and language, our behavior, our BCBA, and our clinical interventionists will all be doing work this summer.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm thinking you're not experiencing any complaints about bullying with this remote situation. Is that correct?
I personally have not received any complaints from parents at this time.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to just look at that subject a little bit. If everybody's away from everybody, perhaps you have less discipline problems, huh? I'm not drawing any conclusions one way or another, good or bad, but it's a factor in what we're experiencing.
Yes.
I have a question. I just wanted to ask, Roanne, that was 40 staff, 40?
Yeah, so we've had 40 staff apply. We're still weeding our way through the hiring process at this time.
That seems like a really, really great number. How many students are we hoping to accommodate this summer with the virtual pathways, summer pathways?
Well, on the typical summertime, we service approximately 250 special ed students, but we would look to supply some level of service to all of them through the remote learning. And so right now, special education numbers in Fitchburg are at just over 1,200 students. So
wow,
those are out-of-district students, which we expect our out-of-district placements to continue providing that summer support, which they have been doing this whole time. So they'll continue to do that. So we won't necessarily be servicing in-district or out-of-district students. That will remain the responsibility of the private school or collaborative.
wow. Thank you.
Yep.
Roanne, I've had a sequential thought to my previous question. Prior to this remote learning, I assume that there was some person in charge or some persons in charge of handling behavior difficulties. So the people that mainly handled that, what are they doing now? What type of work are they doing? Are they free to do other kinds of work?
Yep. So they continue to do a lot of the work that they had been doing in the remote world. So we have our guidance counselors that support that work. So they attend student support meetings or continue to attend student support meetings with their admin and their teams, their ILT teams, and discuss students either that they are getting access to or they're noticing the student having difficulty, and they'll support that student. So you can be invited into teachers' classrooms. So if you're a guidance counselor or you're a specialist, and they'll attend classrooms with teachers. Our BCBAs are contacting families. They're sending home suggestions for how to handle behavior management in the home, because a lot of our students had behavior management plans. So they're working with parents and how to tweak that for the home, and they're having direct contact with families to help support them in that realm.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Roanne.
Thank you, Roanne.
Okay, moving on. I'm going to share my screen here, and myself, John Thompson, Adam Renda, and Mr. Shalafo will give a presentation of the budget for next year, or really just a summary outlook, I will say. As I've communicated to you, the state is in the process of, number one, issuing guidelines to school districts in the Commonwealth about reopening for next school year. Those guidelines are expected to be released at a minimum in draft form by June 15th. The second item that school districts across the state, and particularly Fitchburg, are waiting for is for the state to settle its FY21 budget. Because of the drastic decrease in state revenues and the lack of visibility and the pace of reopening across the state has been very public about their ability to present a budget and the timeline. And the budget is expected to be finalized in either July or August. And at this time, the state is, I think, planning to have a 1/12 budget going forward. So with that as a prelude and to set a little bit of context, clearly the coronavirus is a major health issue facing the country, the world. Massachusetts, today we were informed by our nurse leader that Massachusetts currently ranks 4th in the country in terms of the rate of infections. And every community in Fitchburg, and we're not excluded from that. This past Saturday, there was an article in the Sentinel that tried to compare what the state is facing in this downturn versus the 08-09 recession. And so what I tried to do was take some of the facts from 08-09 that were stated in the paper and look at the aid that we received and compare it to the estimated revenue decrease that the state is expecting for this year. And I tried to extrapolate some numbers highlighted in yellow here. So first, let me start with the 08-09 comparative situation. When what's known now is the Great Recession happened, Massachusetts revenue decreased by $2.5 billion. At that time, there was a stimulus package that funneled $1 billion into Massachusetts for K through 12 public education. Fitchburg in that school year was the recipient of $4.2 million. So what I tried to do is take the percentage of the federal aid as a percentage of mass revenue and carry that over to the current situation. This is really a guesstimate and, really trying to come up with some type of range. There are many districts across the state that are planning in a range of 10 to 20%. And as I use the 40% extrapolation for the public education estimate, given the percentage that was used in 08-09, I estimate that there would probably need to be $1.6 to $2.8 billion of money to be funneled into public education en masse into DESE and distributed out to communities across the state. Using 4/10 of a percent or 4.2% for that range of 1.6 to 2.8 billion comes up to 6.8 to 11.8 million. So these numbers are pretty close to the numbers that we've had as internal discussions, and looking at this year's Chapter 70 at about 57 million, 10%, if it were to be cut 10%, that would be about a $5.7 million cut, or rounding to 6, and a 20% would be 12 million. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, the state has no visibility in terms of how deep the revenue cuts are. There has been nothing official released by the state in terms of how much revenue is down. As they announced when they'd be able to present the budget, given the decrease, they needed to see the revenue for April, May, and June, which we today just entered. And as the state gradually starts to reopen, I think the state is trying to see how their revenue picture either improves or whatever trend it takes this month as they set the budget for next year. One of the key factors in the original budget presented by Governor Baker in January was really success for public education, highlighting the legislative accomplishments of trying to provide equity and opportunity across the state. The legislature passed the Student Opportunity Act, and originally districts were supposed to submit plans for those funds. And originally those plans were to be submitted in March, but after the COVID-19 crisis hit, the deadline was delayed once and again has been rescheduled to Friday, June 19th. I would imagine that date is rescheduled again, as the state will not know its revenue picture until July or August. Going back to the article from the Sentinel, the Senate President Karen Spilka was quoted that the SOA is still a priority for us. They're working on it, and we're continuing to provide what options we have for a budget and for funding. the thrust of this article was that the Massachusetts legislative body, I think, was signing unanimously a letter to all the Washington legislative cohort for federal funding to help states out with the budget as a result of the coronavirus. Given the discord in Washington at the present time, it's difficult to say if anything will result from the request and what track those conversations will take over the coming months. Regardless, the state is planning to prepare a 1/12 budget, and I anticipate that sometime in July or August, we will be notified as to what our Chapter 70 funding will be. Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to Craig Shalafo for a summary of the next couple slides.
Thanks, Bob.
Is it possible to ask a question before that just goes?
Yeah, go ahead, Jean.
If we're on a 1/12 budget, do you get your, sorry if I'm ignorant here, but do you get your Chapter 70 figures each month? Or do you, like, how much are you not sure of each month?
Jean, I don't know how, frankly, I don't know how that will work for Fitchburg in terms of the money flowing from the state to Fitchburg. I'll say, I think it works that the 1/12 budget is based on this year, but this year's budget may be higher than what the actual budget for next year will be.
So just to add to what Bob was mentioning about the Student Opportunity Act, to put things in context in the span of what our planning is right now, on one end, with the Student Opportunity Act, which we all know was landmark legislation to add $1.5 billion to adjust the state educational K-12 funding formula to provide greater access and opportunities for students, particularly those in underserved populations, and to bring about, the change that we have been hoping for, that we can really address, the needs around poverty, the needs around our second language learners, English language learners, special education students. So on one end, we're holding out some hope that things can change and there'll be some assistance available, that we'll see part of that. We are still planning on how we would theoretically use that money. As we're looking at, in January, we were looking at planning for an additional $3.8 million of Chapter 70 funds coming into the city of Fitchburg to provide greater assistance and opportunities for those targeted students. So on one end of the spectrum with the Student Opportunity Act, we're still hoping that there's a chance that some of this money will be available. But obviously, as Bob mentioned, it's strongly dependent on growth in the revenue stream, which, under the COVID-19 crisis is quite suspect. As we've been reading and following along, the state could be looking at anywhere from $4 to $7 billion in revenue losses. So, that's on one end of the continuum, but we will continue. Bob, if you want to go to that next slide. We'll continue our planning to create the best model that we can for our students in the city of Fitchburg. Again, this legislation was really created to level the playing field. Unfortunately, there's a chance that the Student Opportunity Act is, as we say, in the rearview mirror as we move forward. But we are looking to leverage everything possible that we can, and to use the assets that we have in our district to provide the greatest opportunities for our students to be successful.
Okay. And I think, you know, despite the challenge, I think, and the uncertainty at this point with the Student Opportunity Act, you know, one thing I think we have a pretty strong feeling or understanding is that we in Fitchburg and across the state and across the country, we're unlikely to return to a pre-COVID model. As we look at the situation and learn more about the reopening guidance and revenue and really look at what our student needs are. You know, as mentioned, the intent was to help our English language learners, students with disabilities, students in poverty. As we look at what kind of budget we are going to prepare for next year, we're keeping those focus areas in mind. And also that, you know, remote learning is, you know, from Jim Pizer to who's the Secretary of Education in the Commonwealth to Commissioner Jeffrey Riley, remote learning will likely continue in some form. And we'll be talking about that a little bit further on here. So just in summary, we've gone through, or we're in the middle of phase 3 right now. Phase 1 was when DESE really just provided some initial guidance when schools closed on March 16th in response to the COVID virus outbreak across the state. Then phase 2, this DESE provided remote learning guidance that was focused on what had already been taught in schools. And when the governor made the decision to keep the schools closed the remainder of this school year, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education came out with guidance in regards to what standards to teach students to prepare them for their return next fall, and so that they would be ready for the next grade level.
All right.
John?
Yep. So thinking about where we are and going back to March 13th, where it was our last day in school till now, we came up with some goals, you know, for the remainder of the year for us as a district to focus on. So one of our goals was to follow the commissioner's guidance regarding standards. And we did that when those were released back in April. A team of coaches, instructional coaches in the district, actually took those recommended standards that we should be teaching and then compared them to our curriculum benchmark guides and pacing guides. And we actually developed a plan on what we were going to teach in each subject area for each grade level for the remainder of the year based on the commissioner's recommendations. So we've done a lot of work around that to making sure that students will continue learning for the rest of the year. Some of the things that we also talked about is getting better every day and not being afraid to fail. This is new for all of us. We're giving teachers the autonomy to try new things. We want them to take risks, and we want them to be able to try different instructional practices, whether it's project-based learning, whether it's videoing themselves and doing a lesson for students, or actually holding a live video or a live lesson in front of for students. So we really want teachers to really feel during this time that they can take a chance to try something new and, you know, not be afraid to fail at it. And then one of the other things too that we really been pushing this time is that to collaborate and innovate. We want teachers to work together, and we've actually seen a lot of this happening throughout the district. We've seen a lot of teachers working together as grade levels in departments, which has been great. And also, we want teachers to think outside the box and be creative during this time to try different teaching strategies. So those are our goals for the remainder of this school year. And then the commissioner also will be putting out guidance sometime in June on phase 4, which is the reopening of school. We hope to have that as soon as possible so we can start planning. So we have Ed Davis, who is a former Boston and Lowell police chief, is heading up the task force for the phase 4 reopening of schools. And some of the things they're talking about is, how school's going to function, the health and social emotional needs of students, around the personal protective equipment, PPE, and also facilities, how they will run, about sanitizing the facilities, about how many students in the classroom, what transportation is going to look like. So all this guidance will be coming out soon, so we can begin planning to reopen the school, if possible, for the fall.
Thanks, John. So today I came across a graphic. This is from
Bob, can I ask a question? Sorry, I was on mute. John, the previous slide where you said former Commissioner Davis is putting together a task force.
He's heading up the task force.
Okay. Do you know when that task force will be formed? And,
yep.
And I didn't know if there'll be people on the task force from districts that are west of 495.
So the task force has been meeting, and there is a list of members on that task force. I do not have them in front of me.
Okay.
I don't know if you know the list of members. I can get that information to you, Jim.
Yeah, we can get that to you,
okay.
Jim. Generally, the members of the task force are members of various organizations associated with public education in the state. So we have people from the Superintendent's Association, the business managers, head of the transportation companies, the leadership of the MTA is on this. So there's a broad range of representation on the state's task force, on DESE's task force. And Ed's charter is really a little bit more nitty gritty in terms of the nuts and bolts. And he has his own team of subject matter experts in regards to the business. That would include, the transportation, the food service companies, and again, the health and the SEL. He has medical experts from some of the Boston hospitals on his team, and I don't remember the people who he has on the facilities team, but this is they're very accomplished people, and again, the task force is up and running, and they have the unenviable task of trying to put together a plan that, as good as it may be dictated by whatever the state of the virus outbreak is in August and September.
Thank you.
So to continue, the slide of the reopening options came across actually today. It's from Massachusetts. So they get the credit for preparing it, and I'm just sharing it out to the public here, to you and the public for education. So in blue, as we look at each option, it means that it's in gray, distance or remote learning. So really, Fitchburg, Leominster, Ash West, Wachusett, North Middlesex, we're all essentially looking at these options. Starting at the top, do we start on time in buildings and stay there? That would be our traditional opening. I think that option at this time is probably has a low likelihood of happening. That's about as certain as I'll be, I think, for the rest of this presentation in terms of these options. And, you know, second option, start on time in the buildings and then move to remote learning because of an outbreak. You know, clearly there are scientists and epidemiologists who are concerned of an outbreak in the fall. Will that happen? We don't know, or to what extent. Another option is distance learning or remote learning. We start the school year that way, and then students come back to the buildings. That's an option. One option that has been bandied about in various press and in different ways is kind of a hybrid approach. Students are in buildings either some days or weeks and alternating with remote learning. Another option is where certain grades are prioritized as being in the building. For example, you know, K through 8s students are distributed in all school buildings, and the high school include high schools, and students do their studies online. Then again, option 6, start on time. Some families opt for the remote learning out of and then really the last option is the diametric opposite of the first option, which was all blue, and that it's all gray, that it's all remote learning. So as we look at how we return for the next school year, each one of these options carries budgeting considerations that until we have an idea of what that guidance is, coming later this month from the task force from, being led by Ed Davis, we're really in almost a limbo situation. But regardless of us being in this limbo situation, we're still gathering facts on the variables that are associated with each of these options.
So during this time of closure since March, we've seen some really positive outcomes happening throughout the district, and I want to share some of them with you. One of the outcomes that we've seen was some improved collaboration among school-based staff between schools and central office. We really have started working together with the FEA group. And in addition, we also have, like I said before, great collaboration happening within our schools for teachers to plan for students during this time. So we're really seeing a lot of collaboration, and I think that's what really helped us a lot, and to help us transition to this remote learning. The collaboration has really helped with that. So we're happy we're seeing that across the district. Rapid transition to the use of technology tools and platforms to support remote learning. The technology department, Eileen Spinney and her team have done a really great job making sure students have access to Chromebooks in addition to hotspots. And we also are troubleshooting with students, how to use Google platforms and the different applications. So that's going well. We've seen some improvement on parent engagement. Now during this time, we have a lot of parents who are, the one who's providing education to their students. So we've seen a lot of parents checking in with teachers, making sure they're doing the right thing and making sure students are engaged in the schoolwork that teachers are pushing out. During this time too, we see, we are still having IEP meetings. And we are seeing a lot of IEP plans getting approved by parents during this time. So we haven't really missed a beat on timelines during the closure, which is great. This is to me, this is eye-opening, but we've seen engagement of students who otherwise may not have been engaged during the classroom instruction time. So we've heard from some teachers that students who are very quiet and do not participate a lot during class are really enjoying this online platform during remote learning, and we're seeing students complete assignments more and taking a really active role in class. So, you know, this whole online remote learning may not be the best for some students, but others are really enjoying that. And I think this is an opportunity for us to look at education in the future and to hopefully, you know, maybe have some virtual opportunities for students who really like this option of learning. In addition, we want to thank Dane Semenza and the Sodexo crew. We've have over 100,000 meals served to students in the first 8 weeks, which is amazing. So we thank them. They continue to do a great job handing out and preparing meals every day, and we really appreciate that. And then finally, our students and families have been recipients of $14,000 of food gift cards. First, the FEA members have raised $10,000 for food cards for students. In addition, a local financial institution in the city donated $4,000 in food cards or gift cards for students. So we thank everyone who's you know, reached out and supported our students during this time.
So I get to share a little bit more of positive outcomes. And again, it's kind of the same. There's been a lot more collaboration and communication with teaching staff, not only through academics, but also through a tiered system of social emotional support, which I've been lucky enough to be part of what we're calling the S3 team, which is comprised of principals, assistant principals, teachers from every building, and my counterparts at Spencer Office, Roanne Demianchin, Alicia Borosby. And we have been putting together a tiered system of support. A lot of these, especially in Tier 1, had already started, but we're working with the Rennie Center and City Connects out of Boston College to really put together a cohesive plan in tiered systems so that we can support not only the academic, but the social emotional needs of our students. And we really are pretty much running this Tier 1, but we'll be running it fully next year with the universal screener that we started. Alicia's been spearheading doing an ACEs screener during enrollment, which would be a tremendous help for our kindergarten students and for our schools to do proper classroom placements. We have adopted a district-wide classroom management system, which we have a principal and a teacher who will be providing training on that to staff members very soon. We're working on a universal code of conduct, K through 12. We've been working all year on some proactive building management. We are members of the S3 Academy, which is with the Rennie Center in Boston College. Most of us have been to the ruler training out of Yale for emotional intelligence, and a counseling referral system for all of our community members. And that's just Tier 1. Tier 2 would be integrated student support meetings, which will identify barriers to students' education and then provide interventions for that. Some of those interventions can be group or individual counseling by guidance or adjustment counselors. We have the BRIGHT program currently at Fitchburg High School, but we will be expanding that into Longeau, what was supposed to happen this year, but will be happening next year. And we will have guidance support for behavioral management. Tier 3, which is the most severe need, will look like some individual counseling from our licensed social workers or outside counseling if necessary, which is already happening in every building and has been happening virtually since we've been remote. We will confer with outside specialists. We will refer to special education for evaluations. And as always, the BCBA will support our teachers, which they have also been doing remotely, and they do a terrific job. Any questions on this tiered system? Great.
Okay, thank you, Adam. So as we, look at what's transpired over the last 2+ months and look ahead to next year, in no particular order, but these are all, top 2 are major focus areas. One is we're looking to create an authentic engagement experience with our students. we want our students to be engaged in all our grades, so that whether we return in class or hybrid or remote, we want to make sure that our students feel supported and that they belong here in Fitchburg. You know, as we've talked earlier, we've been working with each school and their leadership teams, and really over the entire year. But it's been taken to another level. Is our staff have been given voice in terms of helping shape how education is happening at schools and across the district. You know, if there was one word that we could summarize tonight's presentation, is uncertainty. And, you know, the slide with the 7 options, and when you look at, you know, the reopening guidance that we're waiting for, along with the, you know, budget considerations for each, there might be 21 different, you know, scenarios when we really look at each one, because each option might have 3 scenarios. And, you know, our goal is to enter the new normal in as strong a position as possible, focusing on our students' needs. We have a diverse student body, and we want to make sure we meet the needs of not only the Honors Academy students, but we want to make sure we want to meet the needs of our English language learners, our students with disabilities, and that remains a core priority for us as we go forward.
So as we continue educating our students this year and moving into next year, the district has established some goals or commitments that we will continue to focus on, whether we are teaching remotely, in a hybrid model, or in person. The first goal is every student and parent feels safe and welcome, and they belong in our classroom and schools. We want to make sure that families and all students feel that they are connected to the school, and that all teachers and all staff in our school district are committed to students' academic as well as their social-emotional needs. The district also continues to collaborate and innovate to provide access, equity, and opportunity for all students. We need to make sure that all students are prepared for the future, not only certain specific groups, but every student in Fitchburg that walks through our doors. They should be prepared to, you know, meet the demands of our changing world. So we want to make sure all students are ready, no matter who they are. In addition, we continue to invest in our staff to build distributive leadership models, teams capacity at each school to improve both academic and social emotional outcomes at each school. Principals can't do this work alone. Admin teams in the buildings can't do this work there, you know, on their own. We need teacher leaders in the building, and we've really done a great job this year beginning that work and really creating a distributive leadership model. But we need to continue and provide you know, professional development and guidance for our teachers to continue to develop their leadership capacity in schools. And then finally, we want to leave the accountability zone for all our schools. We want to be above the 10% threshold in every school in the district. I think, you know, unfortunately this year we didn't get a chance to, you know, show that on MCAS, but we felt very confident that we would have seen great movement among our schools that are in the bottom 10%. So we'll have to wait for next year to see what happens with accountability. But these are our goals as a district as we continue to finish this year and continue to move the district forward.
Thanks, John. Adam, you want to take us home with the survey results?
Adam, you're on mute, bud.
Thank you, sir. So to achieve these goals, we need to listen to stakeholders. And as you know, we surveyed teachers a couple of weeks ago, and recently we've surveyed students and parents. with some pretty interesting results. And just for the information, about 200 or so students filled this out, and it was grades 5 through 12, and we had over 500 parent responses. But we surveyed the entire district as parents, K to 12. So 93.5% of our students said that they have access to PPE. Only one of our students reported that they cannot engage in remote learning due to work. We did think that number may be higher. 7.4 reported almost never being in a good mood, which means that over 90% reported being in a good mood sometimes. Boredom is currently an issue for all of our students, and I think it's probably fair to say for most of our parents too. 42% are more stressed out now, but 28% are less stressed out, and the majority of our students are feeling about the same amount of stress as they did before remote learning. Students find the online platforms the easiest to use. That's such as Khan Academy, iReady, and things like Zern. This is like self-directed. They go on and the program kind of leads them through it. 85% of our students are communicating with teachers at least once a week. The majority of those are communicating more than once a week. Our teachers are doing an excellent job reaching out and getting in touch with our kids. And 97% of our teachers, according to our students, are providing feedback on assignments. Some are providing feedback more than once a day. What students want is more collaborative work and more social interaction. Next slide, John, or Bob. So with the parent survey, there are some overlaps here, which kind of confirm some of these results. Interestingly, only 82% of our parents say they have access to PPE. This may be because they are giving it to their children rather than take it themselves. Just over 50% are concerned with their child's learning while the buildings are closed. 84% report that their children are engaged in learning daily. And 96 have reported having reliable internet access. That is a bit higher than it was the last time we surveyed parents. 80% reported morning or afternoon as the best times for remote learning. We had some questions on that. We thought maybe early evening or when parents come home from work might be better, but that is not the case, according to 80%. 8.6% report not being able to assist with schoolwork. I was surprised by that number. I thought that might be a little bit higher, due to work or even some of the new techniques in teaching, especially math. 51% of our parents have reported a job loss, and 60% report loss of income. That's a fairly significant number. 40% are concerned with their child's social and emotional well-being. 25% report their child is receiving too much schoolwork. And parents really want more social interactions for their kids. So there are some more. Sure.
Okay, keep going.
Well, there is a little bit more. There were some open-ended questions that principals in each building can sift through. So this is coming in this information is downloaded into a spreadsheet. Buildings can then sort them by their building, and they can look at those individual responses for some more specific information for each school.
Question. Is this broken down by school?
It can be, yes. This is what I presented tonight is the information for the entire district. However, this can be downloaded into a spreadsheet and sorted by each individual school, and principals have done some of that work.
Thank you.
Could I ask, Adam, do you know if other than this district-wide one, it seems like it would be good to make sure that each principal on, I don't know, some kind of a regular basis is surveying as many parents and students as possible, right? Like that would be, because ultimately a lot of it looks like you're on your continuum that a lot of the plans are district based, for SEL work and all of that. But in terms of school information, I would think each individual school would want to kind of keep plotting its metrics, right?
So I missed the first part of that. It broke up a little bit, but I think you were asking if schools are surveying parents at the building level? Regularly. Yeah, so we've talked a lot about that, and one of the things we don't want to happen is survey fatigue. We've actually 500 responses is a lot more than we typically get when we do a survey. We have talked about that. That input is obviously really important, but kind of like the Connect Ed phone calls, if you do it too much, people stop picking up the phone, and we can see that. We don't know if that would be the case for surveys, but we certainly are going to have to reach out 1 or 2 more times at least before the end of the year. So we have been putting in, when they fill out the survey, they have to identify what school that their child is in, and they can pick multiple schools if it's more than one. That way, schools can sort that and get individual information. But we have not had buildings do this on their own individually yet.
I guess I just think if I'm a principal and like less of my families are engaging on this, why? Right? If certain schools are really overrepresented and other schools are really drastically underrepresented, I would think they'd want to kind of figure that out, right?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, we did notice that there was one school that did not have many responses, and one of the things we were able to do, because we did that, was ask the principal to do a Connect Ed and send out the link again. And that did bring those numbers up. But yeah, that actually exactly what you just said happened. But it did bring the number up. It was more reasonable after that Connect Ed.
I have a few questions. May I go ahead? Okay. Do we have any number on how many students have actually had this virus of all of our students in the city?
I don't have any information.
I don't have any information of that either.
Because it's widely spoken of as not being terribly damaging to the younger groups. And that if it isn't, we should consider that heavily, and which plan we choose. Also, that same question would go for teachers in the system too. I guess I was on mute before because way back to you, Superintendent, I was wondering if all of us might get the names of the people that are on the task force that's going way back there.
Yeah. Well, we can send it out.
Thank you. Have we had any problems with damage to our school buildings with them being largely empty?
Well, they're empty of students, but we have custodial staff that have been in the buildings every day, as we had food distribution occurring at each school. At South Street, there's been a skeletal crew of staff who have been going into central office. I think now that the governor has announced his reopening guidelines, we're starting to see more staff frequent the facilities more, and the custodians who were operating under a state of emergency schedule now have returned the Tuesday after Memorial Day.
But
so
no noted damage or that we've.
I guess not that I'm aware of. Right?
There's been no noted damage. No, and all the maintenance crews are back in their buildings, and they've been doing walkthroughs just to check out the classrooms that have been closed up for the last 2 months, and also doing water flushing programs because the systems have not been operational for the last 2 months.
Right. And I have 2 more questions. Is up until now, when we got hit with this emergency that we had to deal with, We were extremely data-driven. What has happened to a data-driven program in this new way that we are counseling? Is it just on hold?
Yeah, so you're right. It's a really challenging piece to have that data piece available to us during this time. So a lot of the online assessments that we give students, Rosemary, the companies that we use have recommended that we do not give students assessments during this time, because it questions of how valid these tests are, because we don't know if someone's helping students at home take the tests, or if students are doing their best. And what happens is a lot of the instruction, based on the assessments, it changes the student's instruction, and we don't want that to happen. So we've been really relying on anecdotal notes from the teachers during this time, and what students are, what students are doing, who are engaged and who are not engaged, and the assignments students are passing in.
Right, but the strong emphasis that we had rolling along has been on hold. And then
that's a challenge. Yep.
And then my last question had to do with the woman who came here and spoke about working with the principals and side by side. And is that whole plan on hold as well?
We're still proceeding with that. And in fact, she is sitting in on each school's instructional leadership team meetings this week.
Okay. But I do think that the number, getting hold of how many children have actually been ill, or if anybody's died, and the percentages of the students and the teachers would be a strong part of our story and future plans. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I don't know if the mayor has any information from the Board of Health. Again, we're not aware of any students in Fitchburg who have tested positive. And I'm trying to think if there's any staff that we have any confirmed cases. And I guess I'm just,
we meet every morning, Bob. We've been meeting the last 2.5 months.
Yeah.
My leadership team, and Steve Curry has those numbers. We don't ask specifics. We don't want, who it is. There are certain HIPAA regulations, that kind of thing. But for the majority of them are older folks. And so I don't know. You know what? Interestingly, I don't think it's ever come up that it was a student that was testing positive. But I'm sure there are.
But I mean, it might not be the same issue. We might be able to just go forward if it's not a problem for that.
Go forward with what? I'm sorry.
With the regular school.
Yeah. That's for greater minds than mine, Rosemary. We're waiting for this. Every move that the governor makes is going to be data driven. He mentioned that over and over again. And what's that saying? So the numbers reduce, then maybe people feel a little more comfortable and we lessen the restrictions. My reopening group that we put together, it's about 13 or 14 people, is focusing really on small businesses. So the schools, that's in the hands of DESE and the governor's office. And I have no idea where they're going with that.
But we might speak up, getting the information ourselves and speak up and say, well, in this section here, it's not called for to have vastly different plans. Just thought.
But I'm kind of curious if the schools have done much education around social distancing, because I have to say, if you go on social media, so many kids are not following the rules. It's very... It's I don't even know what to believe anymore. I mean, it's discouraging when you're kind of making your own kids follow the rules. But I don't know if principals are talking about that, if you guys as a district are talking about that. I mean, maybe there's nothing you can do and it's like in the parents' hands, but I just was curious if there's any of that education going around.
You know, Gene, when we first started this, Bob and I and Eileen were going on FATV, and we were talking a little bit about that, about keeping some social distancing. But you're right. I don't know how much we've done as a district talking about social distancing with students. But you're right. Just driving down the road in my community and driving into Fitchburg, going into, school, I've noticed a lot more actual students outside now, especially since, we've moved into the reopening phase. So, I think that's something we may have to look at and may have to begin educating students or reminding them that we still have to be practicing social distancing during this time.
I think, initially I think when we had our weekly updates on FATV, we always made a comment about hand sanitation and social distancing. And Gene, I think one of the challenges that, is hard to quantify with data is, and I'll just use the comment that you made as an example, I don't know what to believe. Okay. All of us are being bombarded by information and through formal sites, formal, news channels and social media. Some social media sites are not accurate. But some people believe those social media sites. So at some point, one of the intangibles that I'm sure the DESE task force is considering is people's belief systems. So it's more than hard data, and the mayor is right. And I've watched enough of Charlie Baker's press conferences or Governor Baker's press conferences where he says they will make decisions based on data, but ultimately there's beliefs and feelings, and people make decisions based on beliefs and feelings, not data. So it's up to, I think, it'll be interesting to see where we're at as a state. As our nurse leader informed us this morning, we're fourth nationally, or fourth highest. I don't know if it's per 1,000 or total COVID cases. Be interesting to see where we're at in August and September, and whether the prognosis or estimates of a potential flare-up in the fall materialize. One of the actions that some universities are taking is bringing students back to college campuses earlier than normal and trying to plan around a spike and have an extended winter break. I don't know if we're going to do that. I don't know if the state is going to do that. But that's where, again, there are so many variables. There are variables that can be quantified, and then there are variables that can't be quantified, at least as of right now. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Back to the agenda. I think we have some grants, Craig.
We have two grants first to be submitted this week. 21st Century Community Learning Centers grant. It's $175. It is a continuation grant for the exemplary programs at both Longjo and Memorial Middle School. And this is for another 3-year cycle. And then the second one is the Innovation Pathways Implementation Grant for Fitchburg High School, $20,000. It's a competitive grant to enhance Mr. Roach's manufacturing initiative at Fitchburg High School. And that's it.
What's what's the committee's wish on this? Do you want to take the? I dare not ask for a bundle. We've only got a couple, so we'll do this individually, and each one has to be voted on individually. So you want to do that now, Bob? Is that okay? So action item 20-1302 to approve the superintendent's recommendation to allow Fitchburg Public Schools to continue to accept new school choice district for the 2021 school year. This designation allows parents to send their children to schools and communities other than the city or town in which they reside. Do I hear a motion to accept?
Make a motion to approve superintendent's recommendation.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. We'll take an individual vote as before. Ms. Greenlees?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mayor DiNatale,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
Miss Cragen,
Yes.
Mrs. LaBelle Pierce,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mr. Horgan.
Yes.
We are unanimous.
Thank you. Next action item 20-130. 19-20, approve the superintendent's recommendation to submit following grants titled 21st Century Community Learning Center, exemplary programs grant $175,000, FY21 Innovation Pathways Implementation grant $20,400. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you. Ms. Greenlees, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mayor DiNatale,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
Miss Cragen,
Yes.
Mrs. LaBelle Pierce,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mr. Horgan.
Yes.
We are unanimous.
Thank you. Next, final 20-1304, number 19 and 20. Approve the superintendent's recommendation to accept warrant WG 20047 in the amount of $1,628,637.86 dead. Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion to approve the warrant.
Motion made,
Second?
seconded. Thank you. Ms. Greenlees, would you read the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mayor DiNatale,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
Miss Cragen,
Yes.
Mrs. LaBelle Pierce,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mr. Horgan.
Yes.
We are unanimous.
The motion passes. Thank you all. Next is executive session.
I'll make a motion that we go into executive session for the purpose of negotiations.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Yep.
I'll second. Okay. Ms. Greenlees, read the roll, please.
Yes, sir. Mayor DiNatale,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
Miss Cragen,
Yes.
Mrs. LaBelle Pierce,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mr. Horgan.
Yes.
We are unanimous.